Good afternoon and welcome to 103.2 Dublin City FM and welcome to LGBTQ+life. I'm Mick FitzGerald. Now, regular listeners to this programme will know that I'm a bit of an admirer of Andy Warhol and his work and his environment. Now, over 50 years ago, Andy Warhol, he coined the term superstar, mainly for the women in his life. And to be fair, most of those women had a little extra. And they were then immortalised by Lou Reed in a song called Take a Walk on the Wild Side. Now, sadly, many of them took too much of a walk on the wild side and are no longer with us. But nevertheless, my reason for all of this is my introduction to today's guest, who I think is a genuine superstar. My reason for all of this is my introduction to today's guest, who I think is a genuine superstar in the making, and that's our great friend Liath Hannon. So Leah, welcome to LGBTQ+life.
Hi Mick, thank you so much for having me.
Yep. No pressure then.
No pressure at all. No.
Yeah. Leah, the first thing I have to ask you is, I have never come across the name Liath before. I've Leahs and all of those, the various...
It's actually, you're not supposed to pronounce the TH.
You know,
Leah. No, everyone does. No, it's the Irish for grey.
Grave?
Grey, not grave.
Oh, Leah, of course, yeah, Leah Ford and all that. Yeah,
exactly. No, I'm not that morbid. Yeah. No, I think I just misheard another girl's name when I was a kid, and it just kind of went from there. But yeah, this is what happens when you choose your name when you're 14.
Well, that's to be impressed, and not only that, you picked an original one.
Thank you. It served me well.
This is Ireland. You could have gone with Mary or Teresa or Philomene or any of those.
Oh, that was my second choice.
Leah, one of the reasons why we're here to welcome you as a guest today is because you're going to be appearing in the International Dublin Gay Theatre Festival, but we'll come back to that shortly. But the reason why I said I think you're a superstar in the making, because one of my talents is I am a great talent spotter. And to give you an example, I was probably the first person I knew who said Prince was going to be enormous.
Wow.
Now that was over 40 years ago. The next one I picked was Kylie Minogue.
Well, okay.
And that was pretty good too.
That's...
Yeah, the current one before yourself was Niamh Algar. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Niamh's work, but Niamh is going to be an enormous actress. She's from Mullingar or somewhere like that. But Niamh is a fabulous actress. So I like to think when I see something, I don't need a second guess. As I say, the first time I saw you was at the launch of the theatre festival, and I thought, that woman has it. You know, and that's, you can't buy that. You can't teach people that. You either have it. So, in one sense, it's a gift, and another one, it's a curse, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not going to talk too much about your personal life, because there's an excellent article that was written in Vice magazine by yourself, I gather.
Yeah.
And I'm going to refer to them that. Just type in Liath Hannon, Liath Hannon. But there's some couple of things that came out in that was that struck me. First of all, none of us live in a vacuum. None of us are live in a vacuum. You know, we're based in space and time. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, you were probably grown up in Dublin, and I would suspect even on the north side. How good am I there?
Very good, very astute.
What was your experience growing up there? I mean, the article you wrote,
yes,
it's quite a mixed article in the sense that it talks about different phases in your life. Mm-hmm. Some, I suspect, weren't that happy, but now it finishes on a very positive note. What's your overall, shall we say, judgment on that whole period?
Well, yeah, that was quite complicated. So yeah, no, I grew up in Drumcondra really. Then we moved out to Sutton when I was about, I want to say 10, 11 maybe. Yeah, and it was obviously a lovely place to grow up, but it was very lonely. Just very, I don't know, I didn't really have a very good time in school. I went to a pretty decent private school that I will not name, but there's just a very dark culture there of just bullying and kind of very discriminatory behaviour. A lot of social isolation. So yeah, no, it kind of, but that definitely formed a lot of, what would become parts of me.
I hated school. I make no bones about it. Unlike yourself, my mother wouldn't allow me to change schools when I was not only being bullied but groomed and all of those things. So I had to deal with all of that. But when you moved school, was that a happier experience?
Yeah, it was absolutely transformative. I moved to a really, I can probably say Mount Temple on the air. I've already said it anyway.
Okay.
Great school. Just an amazing culture. Everybody was just very welcoming. But even then, I mean, that wasn't without its difficulties. I remember even the first week I moved there, we didn't tell anybody that I was trans. And first weekend I was invited to a party. I got there, then I went off with a friend of mine, and it was revealed that I was just invited there to find out whether or not that was true, which was obviously nasty. However, on the total, it was an amazing experience and a really, really just welcoming place.
Just shows you what a generational difference can make. You had parties.
Absolutely.
But something I found a bit upsetting in one sense, you said, when you came to a certain stage in your life, the girls distanced themselves from you, and I thought that's a bit sad, really, because my experience is that most people are embraced, and particularly now, are embraced by their female colleagues, whereas that was a bit sad. Was it ignorance or prejudice, or how would you put it?
That's a very difficult question, I suppose, because, I mean, this is probably going back to when I was about 8, 9, 10. So it's hard to say whether it's to do with pressure from their parents or the beginning of puberty and everything that comes with that, and sort of the separation of the sexes that comes in, especially at that point in just pre-adolescence. But yeah, it was a very sad time, really. It was a very sad time to grow up, honestly.
Well, it's interesting because 10 years ago, when we're looking at you, 10, 12 years ago, I thought that was the start of the age of enlightenment in Ireland, because when I grew up, and I say this openly to people, there were no gay people in Ireland.
Absolutely.
There were only queers. And I was classified, I was called the queer fella. So about, 30 years later or thereabouts, when queer came again, they caught up with me, as I like to say.
No, absolutely. I remember when I was about 7, oh my God, one of the girls in my class came over to me saying, "My dad says you're a faggot."
How rude.
Just unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, clearly this is what they talk like at
Absolutely.
home.
But yeah, it's just, it is so recent, and no matter how enlightened things kind of can appear, that it's always an underbelly, and the people who feel it most are typically children.
And not only that, I mean, I would hope you grew up in a more enlightened period, but for those of us who weren't overtly, they didn't play rugby at my school. They played hurling. If you weren't one of those, rah hurlers, generally you could expect to get picked on by the kids, because it was an all-male school, and groomed by the Christian brothers. So what can you say? I mean, and I took this issue up with my mother about 30 years later, and I said, we told you what was going on, and she said, but even if I believed you, there was nothing we could have done, because nobody would have believed them either. So it's so this is what I say to people now, particularly people like yourself. And I mean that as generational people, is that when we passed the marriage equality, and then a few months later passed the gender recognition, this is the legacy of my generation to yours, and I could not be happier. So
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Look, we gave people an environment that they can grow up in and be themselves, whereas the other way around is that we were supposed to grow up to be somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
and it was horrible. But if you could just bear with me, Leah, here for a second, because there was a couple of quotes I really liked in this, and I thought they were just so superb.
Thank you.
It says, the idea, it says, it is widely believed and then demanded that we define ourselves by your, if you like, transition. And it says, it's a proliferation, it says, however, this idea is a myth. It's a proliferation that decentralises and shifts us away from trans woman's lived experience to a narrative created by cis society for its own gratification. Now, that is so eloquent, but at the same time, it needs to be said.
Yeah, no, totally.
Is that your experience of that, those people who, we really understand you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people generally project a lot and fixate a lot on sort of transition as a certain narrative, as certainly a beginning and an end. Whereas, I mean, once you're kind of through the first year of it, you realize that there is really no sense of finality to it. It's kind of a constant evolution, and it sort of becomes part of your personhood. I think a lot of people bring kind of their ideas of what it might mean, but they don't necessarily grasp the sort of the very human nature of it, in that it is just a sort of state of flux.
My first experience of trans was in literature in 1969, I think, and I can put it down to my very perverse father. He used to bring all these books into the house, and the first time I ever read about trans was in a book called Myra Breckenridge.
I'm familiar with the film.
Yeah, I've never seen the film.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I did read the book. And then, of course, a couple of years later, Lou Reed brought out Transformer, which, people say, oh, this changed my life. It didn't change my life, but it was the first album that really spoke to me, and I thought, yeah, I really get this. And then a couple of months later, I had a friend, and we were in London, and he said to me, have you ever read Last Exit to Brooklyn? And I said, no. He said, do you like Transformer? And I said, yeah. He said, well, you'll love this book. So I'm just going to recommend you read Last Exit to Brooklyn. Now, it's a book of short stories, but at the end of it, there is a novella called Strike. And I think you'll find, this was one of the places where I first discovered this is really superb the way it's written. And it's the central one of the central characters in it is a trans woman. And again, certain things speak to you from time to time. So I'm going to recommend you have a look at Last Exit to Brooklyn, because it was the book that defined porn. Well, it was the book that was brought before the courts in the UK in about 1965-66. And it was the benchmark for what was to define pornography. And they decided it wasn't pornographic, that it was literature.
How nice for them.
So I think if you have a look at that, it might be a bit difficult to find now, but it's a superb piece there. So to say, when you're growing up and evolving, where did you first, shall we say, see yourself in the big wide world, whether it's in media, whether it's in literature, whether it's in music?
That's a very good question. God, I'd really have to think about that.
Yeah.
I remember I got very into Valley of the Dolls, the film. That was a big one for me. When I was sort of 13, 14.
Russ Meyer, if I'm correct.
No, that's Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. The original Valley of the Dolls with Sharon Tate in it. I remember I was very, very into her for a long time. God, what else? Oh. Yeah, I suppose, I mean, it's a bit trite, but I suppose when I saw Orange is the New Black, I mean, I was certainly aware of my transness by that point, but that was really kind of, that was very sort of formative in terms of like what the possibilities were as a trans person, especially kind of in 2013 because it's so funny back then, things were so like, it was just such a non-issue, which is so funny. I mean, I suppose it's the difference between invisibility and hypervisibility. But in general, people were much less sensitive about it, by which I mean people were much less worried about what the ramifications of it might be.
Well, coming back to that point, I got into the whole, if you like, sexual politics because I was, if you like, covering politics as a subject.
Of course.
And now I've covered a lot of the, whether it's marriage equality, whether it's gender recognition, whether it's, repeal the eighth. I haven't seen you at the rallies. Now, are you a non-political person? And that's to be respected if you are. If you are.
No, I would not say I'm a non-political person at all. I did go to quite a good few of the repeal rallies. I remember I was in secondary school during marriage equality. Actually, funny story. We had a gay wedding for two of our teachers during the referendum. We also held a school-wide vote as to whether we supported it, and the 30% who said no were hunted down by the rest of us. But no, yeah, I would say I'm quite political. However, I don't. It's something that I find very difficult to engage with, just because of the emotional intensity of it.
I know. I mean, I respect that, and to be honest, when I got involved, I was involved with Tenny in 2012, and a lot of the people I knew then, who were part of Tenny and who were looking for the legislation to be passed, were older.
Yes.
You know, there weren't people your age. When I go to another rallies now, most of them are your age,
Yeah.
younger, and it's almost like identity has become the core value rather than in the past. You know, it's not that identity wasn't, but it's that, hold on, we're more than just how we're portrayed in the, and that was the very, you know, so the people I knew then, they were concerned with things like whether they'd have to divorce, because most of them had married. They were concerned with things like a lack of health care. They were concerned with things like whether they could continue to be members of their golf club. Whereas now I'm hearing things like, well, it's all about the dialectical materialism and things like that, which, you know, I'm not sure, I'm not saying it's not, but I mean, sometimes you have to get back to the core values. And the core values, as we discover when people in the UK get murdered at 14 years of age, that's the core values as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my God, yeah. No, I don't think anything in the past few years of that debate has ever hit as hard as that poor girl's death.
Wasn't horrible.
Oh my God. Well, it just reminded me so much of myself, and even just the first time I saw a picture of her, I saw so much of myself in her.
Yeah.
Yeah, God.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm not going to mention any names here or anything like that, but I've been following, if you like, the anti-trans impetus for the last 3 or 4 years, and my view is very simple, based on what I know, is that there are forces or interests who are financing a lot of this on the basis that trans is the Achilles heel of the LGBTQ plus movement, and that's what they're trying. That's why there's so much focus on trans to the and trans women. You never hear anything about trans men. I want to move on to a certain degree, but because you finished that article, and I thought it had an absolutely superb conclusion. Now, I should say, Leah, what I always, when I look at people, what defines their character for me are two things. You know, what I find attractive is one, intelligence, because lots of people are beautiful, but they're not always intelligent, and the other is courage. Now, you have both in spades. I'm going to give you that one. But what you said here, and I thought it was just absolutely superb, it says, transness for me is a subordinate aspect of my identity. It's something I love and embrace and feel empowered to share, but at its core, it's an afterthought. That is everything that needs to sum up the debate. So if you wrote that article yourself, give yourself a pat on the back, because it really is superbly written.
I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Are you still with Brown Thomas, by the way? Are you? You were doing modelling for Brown Thomas. I should say that.
Yeah, Brown Thomas and I have broken up. No, I'm just messing. No, I haven't worked with them for a while, but no, I worked with them a couple of years ago. They're a very, very, very great team and really sweet in there.
Yeah. But I want to move on because you and I, we first crossed paths a couple of weeks ago at the launch of the 20th International Dublin Gay Theatre Festival. And next Monday, which is the 1st of May Day for all those lefties out there, you are going to be, as I say, making your stage debut as a leading lady in a play called The War Wounded up there in the Teachers Club. How did that come about?
I actually saw an ad on Fish Pond looking for an open call for it, and I didn't even know the script yet. Then when I read it, I was very surprised how much I connected with the character. Also, just the rarity of getting basically a blind script and then having the character share so much very core aspects of who you are as a person is just so kind of cosmic almost. So as the second I saw it, I really knew that it was something that I wanted to try and be a part of.
Had you done much acting before that?
Yes, I was I studied in UCD in drama and film, and then after that I went to the Gaiety for about a year, and then I just finished in Bow Street Academy just around the corner from here, before I started doing this play. So yeah, no, I'm kind of new. So
you're well credentialed.
Oh, you could say.
To be fair, I've seen various models doing acting, and I think one of the more cringe-making I ever saw was Claudia Schiffer playing an anthropologist, if I'm correct, a professor of anthropology. And to be fair, Claudia didn't leave her mark in a positive way. You know, Elle Macpherson wasn't great.
Not great either.
There were a few who did, but Is it a difficult transition, to use a phrase?
You've not really. I mean, I suppose the thing is they're two completely different beasts. I mean, one might think that they're quite similar just simply because of the awareness of the camera, but you're doing things that are just completely different. Now, once you kind of have a grasp on acting, it can help you in modelling for sure, because you kind of understand a different intentionality behind your movement and your gaze. But it is a difficult transition.
Yeah. So tell us about the play itself. The war. When I saw The War Wounded, I said to you at the time, I said, that looks very medieval, but it's anything but, is it?
Anything but. It's about, basically, it takes place at a routine film junket. Is
there such a thing?
Oh, never is, really. Yes, a film junket in which a disgraced former war reporter comes to interview an actress just on the heels of her first Oscar nomination. Essentially to confront her over some rumours that have been swirling about her past. Reprehensible, really. And I play Sophia, who is the actress in question. And yeah.
And when you started doing it, I mean, I would suspect there's a certain amount of trepidation, because you think, oh yeah, I mean, these are all seasoned actors, and this is my debut, but... Did you take it too literally, as we say, like a fish to air?
I would hope so. I would hope so. I mean, John Lawler and Helen McGrath, who are my co-stars, they are just incredible and just so giving as actors. So they've been very, very helpful, and everything that we've done has just been so kind of safe. In terms of rehearsal, we've really been able to experiment with our performances together and give each other a lot of feedback and assistance. So yeah, absolutely. I think I'd have taken like a fish to air.
I gather now, if this was a movie and it was going for an Oscar, it would be up there for adapted screenplay. Now, I'm not familiar with the novels it's based on. Can you share anything with the listeners about what the novels are? One I think is called, dare I say it, Love Nor Lack of Love, and the other one is called
yes. Actually, those are
The Runs of the Litter.
Those are novels by Garrett, who is the
okay, that's the
those are actually just other works of
Garrett
his.
is the producer.
He is the
okay, that's the
those are actually just other works of
Garrett
his.
is the producer.
He's the writer and producer, I suppose, but he's brilliant. It's not based on those as far as I know.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there's a little bit of crossover. But yeah.
Well done, Gareth. So
Gareth. I hope you're listening out there.
We should give Gareth a shout out here.
Absolutely.
Gareth's name is Gareth Baker.
Gareth Baker.
And it's also got a distinguished director as well. Mo O'Connell. Tell what's Mo like to work with?
She's honestly the best director I've ever worked with in my entire brief but entire career. Just incredibly sensitive, incredibly intuitive. He's the writer and producer, I suppose, but he's brilliant. It's not based on those as far as I know. Yeah. But I'm sure there's a little bit of crossover. But
well done, Gareth. So
Gareth. I hope you're listening out there.
We should give Gareth a shout out here.
Absolutely.
Gareth's name is Gareth Baker.
Gareth Baker.
And it's also got a distinguished director as
well.
Mo O'Connell. Tell what's Mo like to work with?
She's honestly the best director I've ever worked with in my entire brief but entire career. Just incredibly sensitive, incredibly intuitive, incredibly supportive, just incredible all around.
We're probably going to have to schlep off in a second or so, Leah, but tell people when it's on, where it's on, and how they can get to see it.
Okay, so The War Wounded will be on in the Teachers Club from May 1st to 6th, 7:30 p.m. every night, and 2 matinee performances at 4 p.m. on Monday and Saturday. And you can get your tickets either in the Street 66 pub on Parliament Street, I think. Yes.
That's
Parliament Street.
The old front lounge for those who are a bit of
the
older genre.
And there's also tickets available at dublingaytheatre.ie.
Yeah. The Teachers Club is up the top end of Parnell Square.
Parnell Square.
And if you go past the rotunda and up on the left-hand side, it's up there. So also, there are matinees, because I know I'm going to see you in your first performance
Oh,
in
look
the
at
matinee
you.
on
Great.
Monday.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, Leah Hannon, I just wanted to say it has been a delight. We will have to have you back again.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, as we say to all thespians, break a leg. Have a great time at the 20th International Dublin Gay Theatre Festival.
You live in a wall of